Well, I think the first thing to say that practically speaking, it's not a proposition that can be enacted because the only way out of Gaza at the moment is through the Rafah border, which in fact is being blockaded by Egypt, a neighboring Muslim country. And they don't want people coming out of Gaza because the last time their border was penetrated, tens of thousands of people in 2008, tens of thousands of Palestinians from Gaza came into Egypt. And since then, actually, Egypt has reinforced its border dramatically. And they're the ones who are restricting not just people coming out, but aid going into Gaza at the moment. Which brings me on to my second point, and that there are 23 Arab countries in and around Gaza that are not reaching out to assist Palestinians in Gaza. And there's a reason for that. The vast majority of Arab states are sick and tired of the conflict being promoted by Hamas and through Gaza. And Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, others, including Saudi Arabia, which is on the verge of reaching a deal with the US to recognize Israel, which would have resulted in quite a substantial shift of power in favor of Saudi away from Iran, are not reaching out to the Palestinians. And it's really incumbent on the 23 Arab nations surrounding the locality, first of all, to deal with their own local problem. It's not for the United Kingdom. Then the third thing I think that people really need to take on board is that Hamas is a terrorist organization that has been governing Gaza for the last 17 years. It has educated Palestinians in Gaza. It has inculcated in them the hostile views that they have to the West, which is nothing short of, as far as Israel is concerned, its total destruction. And if we were to take in Palestinians from Gaza, there is a very real risk that they will come to the United Kingdom with great antipathy in their hearts, discontent, and like we've seen with many others who've come across to the United Kingdom, that actually they do damage to the UK. So as much as I applaud Jennifer for her humanitarian call to arms, it's not a practical proposition right now. And even if it were practical, I would caution very greatly against it, given the influence that Hamas has had on Palestinians in the region for the last 17 years.
Jennifer, let's bring you back in at that stage. I mean, the government does align itself with Israel. It's been strong in its stance that Israel has a right to defend itself. And in that sense, they are supporting the airstrikes on Gaza. Would you agree with that sense from Ben Habib, that it perhaps then isn't our place to take in Palestinian refugees, that it should go to the neighbours of Gaza, to the likes of Egypt, where the Rafah crossing is the only other border with the Gaza Strip? Should they be going to Qatar or Saudi Arabia?
So if I can start by just making clear, we are talking about children. We are talking about defenceless children, and we are talking about their mothers. We're not talking about giving a refuge to Hamas. And to conflate the two is really, really damaging and just not helpful. Anyone who is offered refuge in this country is going to feel nothing but gratitude. And you know, what I would say to Ben is that if you were walking past a pond and saw a child drowning in it and looked and saw that that child was from an Arab nation, would you say, well, I'm not going to pull that child out of the pond because they have a different coloured skin from me, or there must be an Arab person around who can pull them out? I mean, it's the most terrible logic. This is our duty. We are not talking about giving refuge to anyone who's dangerous. We're not talking about not having screening procedures. We are talking about children who at the moment are trapped in a shooting gallery. Ben, I heard your point that in practical terms, at the moment, no one can get out. So this is a theoretical request at the moment, but what it means is that we can get ready for the moment when people can come out. And we're not talking about great numbers. We're talking initially about 1,000 children, and we've already had an influx of families offering to open their homes to those children and their mothers. So we're not asking local government to intervene. We are just saying those of us who are able and willing to offer refuge to a child who would otherwise be trapped in the most horrific circumstances, that we should be allowed to do so. So I think it's very easy to put this into a bucket and to use the normal dog whistle language which is used around these issues, which is that anyone who comes from Gaza could be a dangerous terrorist and therefore we mustn't let them here. And furthermore, it's not our job to be humanitarian because there are others who can do it for us. In a situation like this, I just think we all have to ask ourselves, what would we want done if these were our children that were trapped and being killed, being traumatized, being injured, having buildings collapse around them, having their schools destroyed, having hospitals bombed? What would we want? We would reach out to them and we would say, come here and let us look after you until you are safe. And all of us who've seen the scenes unfold on television, the terrible, catastrophic scenes of collapsed building, of people buried alive, would want to make some kind of intervention and be of some use to those, particularly children who by an accident of birth have been born into this terrible, terrible situation. You know, we're lucky here sitting in the studio. We are so lucky. We do not know what a conflict like that looks like or feels like. We are safe, and it's incumbent on us to help those that we can.
Ben Habib, what Jennifer is essentially saying there is, where is our humanity? And on a practical note, why couldn't we have something like a Ukrainian scheme where we're allowing in women and children with proper screening in place? Who would we be to stop people who are willing and able to house these refugees?
Well, just picking up on a couple of things Jennifer said, and without wishing to undermine in any sense the appeal to arms that she made for humanitarian response. But I'm not conflating Palestinians with Hamas. What I'm saying is that Hamas has been in charge of Gaza for the last 17 years. It is responsible for the education of these children that Jennifer would take in. And they have been putting out their ideology, their anti-Western terroristic ideology, embedding it in the people of Gaza. The notion that women and children coming across the UK, many of whom presumably would be teenagers, won't have antipathy to us as they enter the country is, I'm afraid, not realistic. They've been educated into despising the West, despising our values, wishing to obliterate Israel. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, it's not just a matter of technicality that the Egyptian border is closed. The Egyptians have closed their border because they fear what would happen to Egypt if they let these people in. And it's because they know there are risks from these refugees coming into Egypt.
Okay.
There's a reason why 23 Arab nations are not reaching out to it, reaching out to the Palestinians in Gaza, because they fear it. And we should go tread very, very carefully in our approach. Okay. Remember, just to reiterate, Hamas is a terrorist organization. It has been educating these people for the last 17 years.